The lights of Estadio Monterrey were still humming when the decision was made. 90 minutes of football had just ended, but for one man, the world was already shrinking. Sabri Lamouchi didn't know it yet, but he was a ghost standing on a touchline. He was the first sacrifice of the 2026 World Cup, discarded before the first week of the tournament had even finished. We are 5 days into the greatest show on earth, and the machinery of international football has already claimed its first victim. This has never happened. In 96 years of World Cup history, across 22 previous tournaments and hundreds of managerial tenures, no nation has ever fired their coach after exactly one game, not one, until now. To understand how we got to this unprecedented moment of institutional violence, you have to look at the grass in Guadalupe. Sunday night, Tunisia versus Sweden. On paper, it was a clash of styles. In reality, it was a demolition. The Swedish attack didn't just beat the Tunisian defense, they dismantled it with the cold precision of a factory line. 5-1. Alexander Isak found gaps that shouldn't exist at this level. Viktor Gyökeres played like a man against children. Matthias Svanberg dictated the tempo as if he were practicing in an empty park. It was the most lopsided opening result in the history of Tunisian football, a national humiliation broadcast to hundreds of millions. But the scoreline only told the surface story. The real tragedy was written in the names on the score sheet. One of the men who put 2 goals past the Tunisian goalkeeper was Yassine Ayari. He is a bright, young Swedish talent. He is also the son of a Tunisian immigrant, a son of the diaspora returning to the biggest stage of all to put a brace past the country of his father's birth. It was a poetic cruelty that the Tunisian Football Federation, or the FTF, could not stomach. In the post-match press conference, Sabri Lamouchi looked like a man who had seen his own obituary. He talked about shooting themselves in the foot. He talked about self-inflicted wounds. He was right. He just didn't realize the Federation was already holding the gun. 24 hours later, he was gone. To the casual observer, sacking a manager after 90 minutes of a tournament is a move born of pure, unadulterated panic. It looks like a federation losing its mind under the bright lights of North America. But when you peel back the layers of the FTF, you realize this wasn't a snap decision. This was the conclusion of a long, controlled collapse. Lamouchi was a dead man walking before the plane ever left Tunis. The infrastructure of his downfall was built months ago, brick by brick, failure by failure. Look at the data. Lamouchi didn't just lose a game in Mexico, he failed to build a foundation. In his final 5 games in charge of the Eagles of Carthage, he managed exactly one victory. That win came against Haiti, a 1-0 result that did nothing to inspire confidence. The warm-up window for this World Cup was a sequence of red flags. They lost 1-0 to Austria in a performance that lacked any tactical identity. Then came the warning shot that everyone ignored. They were eviscerated 5-0 by Belgium. 2 games, 0 goals scored, 6 goals conceded. The alarm bells were ringing in the halls of power, but Lamouchi was still convinced he had the dressing room. He didn't. You could see the cracks forming on live television in the 72nd minute of the Sweden match. Tunisia was already drowning. Lamouchi opted to sub off defender Jan Valeri. The reaction was visceral. Valeri didn't just walk off the pitch, he erupted. He made it clear to every camera in the stadium that the respect between the player and the coach had evaporated. When a senior player openly revolts during the opening game of a World Cup, the authority of the manager isn't just questioned, it is erased. However, the rot went deeper than tactical disagreements. In the high-security, high-pressure environment of a World Cup training camp, trust is the only currency that matters. Reports began to leak from the Tunisian base that Lamouchi had brought his own son into the inner sanctum of the team's preparations. The Federation officials were stunned. They demanded an explanation for why an unauthorized individual was given access to the squad's private quarters. This wasn't just a breach of protocol. To the FTF, it was proof that Lamouchi viewed the national team as a personal fiefdom rather than a professional institution. Before a single ball was kicked in Monterrey, the men who hired him were already looking for reasons to fire him. The historical weight of this sacking cannot be overstated. The World Cup is usually a place of second chances, or at least a place where you are allowed to fail completely before the axe falls. In 1998, Tunisia fired Henrik Kasperczak, but they waited until the second game was over. That same year, South Korea dismissed Cha Bum-kun only after they had been mathematically eliminated following 2 losses. Even the infamous 2018 Spanish disaster, where Julen Lopetegui was fired 2 days before the tournament, happened because of a contract dispute with Real Madrid, not a result on the pitch. Lamouchi has achieved a unique, dark immortality. He is the first man to be judged and executed based on a single 90-minute performance in the history of the tournament. This is a federation that does not value continuity. It values results and the appearance of control. Earlier this year, they sacked Sami Trabelsi after a disappointing exit from the Africa Cup of Nations at the hands of Mali. Lamouchi was the hand-picked successor signed to a contract that was supposed to take him through to 2028. He lasted 5 months. The FTF operates with a guillotine in the boardroom. They do not wait for the smoke to clear. They simply remove the head of the operation and move on to the next candidate. And who is the next candidate? In the middle of a World Cup, with the eyes of the world watching, they turn to the only man who seems to thrive in this specific brand of international chaos. Hervé Renard, the man of the crisp white shirt, the man who has turned African and Asian football into his own personal playground. This is Renard's 3rd consecutive World Cup with a 3rd different nation: Morocco in 2018, Saudi Arabia in 2022, Tunisia in 2026. He is a nomadic specialist in the impossible. The FTF is betting everything on the Renard myth. They remember 2022. They remember the image of Renard in the locker room at halftime, screaming at his Saudi Arabian players that they were playing like they were at a tourist attraction before they went out and stunned Lionel Messi's Argentina. That is the miracle the Tunisian officials are trying to buy. They want the man who can walk into a dressing room on fire, breathe in the smoke, and come out with a tactical masterclass. Renard isn't just a coach, he is a psychological reset button. He arrives in Monterrey with no time to breathe. He inherits a squad that is mentally broken and physically exposed. He has Wabi Khazri, the veteran leader, staying on as an assistant to provide some semblance of bridge between the old regime and the new. But the task ahead is a mountain. The group stage doesn't get easier. Up next is Japan, a team built on the very technical precision that Tunisia lacked against Sweden. Then come the Netherlands. Renard is being asked to perform a heart transplant while the patient is running a marathon. But we have to ask why this happens. Why does a federation like Tunisia's choose this path? It's about the politics of the sport. In many nations, the national team is the ultimate symbol of state competence. A 5-1 loss isn't just a sporting failure, it's a national embarrassment that demands a public execution. By firing Lamouchi after 1 game, the FTF is attempting to distance itself from the failure. They are telling the fans and the government that the problem wasn't the players, the preparation, or the federation's own leadership. The problem was one man, and that man has been removed. This wasn't a series of isolated mistakes. It was exactly how the system was designed to work. The system creates a scapegoat to protect the institution. They gave Lamouchi enough rope to hang himself, and then they pulled the lever the moment the Swedish goals started piling up. The expansion of the 2026 World Cup to 48 teams has only increased this pressure. With more teams and a more complex path to the knockout rounds, the margin for error has shrunk to nothing. The financial rewards for advancing are massive. The cost of failure is total. The stadium in Monterrey is a cathedral of modern sport, but for the Tunisian team, it became a site of forensic analysis. Every misplaced pass by Jan Valeri was recorded. Every tactical lapse in the midfield was noted. Every time Lamouchi put his head in his hands, it was seen as a sign of weakness. The federation didn't just see a loss, they saw a brand being devalued in real time. In the modern era of the World Cup, the national team is a product, and the product was defective. As Renard takes his first training session, he is walking into a camp that knows exactly how fragile their positions are. If the manager can be fired after one game, no player is safe. The psychological impact of this decision will either galvanize the squad or shatter it completely. There is no middle ground. Renard's first task won't be tactical. It will be emotional. He has to convince 26 men that the tournament hasn't already ended for them. He has to make them forget the 5 goals. He has to make them forget the image of their former coach being escorted to the airport like a criminal. The 2026 World Cup was marketed as a festival of football, a celebration of the game's growth. But this incident reminds us that beneath the branding and the festivals, this is a brutal, high-stakes industry. It is an industry that consumes people. Sabri Lamouchi is now a footnote in a history book, the answer to a trivia question that won't be asked for another decade. He is the man who was too slow to adapt to a world that no longer rewards patience. What happens if Renard fails? If Japan slices through them with the same ease as Sweden, the FTF will have run out of people to blame. They will have played their final card. This is the gamble of the desperate. You fire the coach to buy yourself 3 more days of hope. You bring in a celebrity manager to distract the press. You change the narrative from Tunisia is bad to can Renard save Tunisia? It is a masterclass in crisis management, but it is a terrible way to run a football team. The players are caught in the crossfire. Imagine being a young player in that locker room. You see your teammate screaming at the manager. You see the manager's son in the dining hall. You hear the whispers that the president of the federation is already calling agents in France. Then you go out and lose 5-1. You feel the weight of a nation's anger. And before you've even had a recovery session, you are told you have a new boss. The stability required to compete at the highest level has been intentionally torched by the people who were supposed to provide it. This is the new reality of the global game. The cycles are getting shorter. The reactions are getting faster. The patience of governing bodies has been replaced by the need for immediate, performative action. We are seeing the Premier League-ification of international football, where the manager is treated as a disposable component rather than a builder of a project. Lamouchi's 144-day tenure is a symptom of a larger sickness in how we value time in sport. As the sun sets over the mountains of Monterrey, the Tunisian team prepares for a future that no one saw coming a week ago. They are a team in transition, in the middle of the world's biggest transition. They are the first team in 96 years to prove that in the World Cup, you don't even get a second chance to make a first impression. You get 90 minutes. If you fail, the world moves on without you. Sabri Lamouchi is likely already home, or at least far away from the cameras. He will carry the stigma of this record forever. The man who couldn't make it to Game 2. The man who lost the locker room and the boardroom in the same evening. But history might be kinder to him than the FTF was. History might look at the 5 goals and the internal rot and realize that no manager, not even Renard, could have saved a house that was already leaning so far to one side. The 2026 World Cup will continue. There will be more goals, more shocks, and more heroes. But the ghost of the Monterrey sacking will hang over every other struggling manager in this tournament. They now know the floor has been removed. They know that the traditional grace periods are dead. The precedent has been set. One bad night is all it takes to become a victim of the system. Tunisia faces Japan with a new man in a white shirt and an old problem in their hearts. They are playing for pride, for survival, and for a federation that has shown it has no loyalty to anything but the scoreboard. The experiment of the one-game sacking is officially underway. Whether it leads to a miracle or a further descent into chaos, the message has been sent to every coach in the world. The tournament is no longer a journey. It is an audition. And the judges are not looking for potential. They are looking for reasons to say no. The first victim has been claimed, but in a tournament this big, with this much money on the line, he won't be the last. The machinery is hungry. The cameras are waiting. The next 90 minutes are already counting down. What is the price of one bad night? The world is watching.